Hello, this is GAMEZOMATIK and welcome back to the channel. And I thought I'd come on today and do a little bit of a video response video, which I don't normally do. I do the odd one now and again, or a little talk or a vlog or whatever you want to call it. I watched a video the other day by Escape to Gaming, a guy called Vinny who's got a channel. American guy, absolutely fantastic YouTuber. I'll put the link to his video below. He always comes across as a really nice guy, knows what he's talking about, and you know, he's been like me, he's been gaming for a hell of a long time, and he did a really interesting video about negativity in gaming, or chronic negativity, and this video just really hit a chord with me because a lot of what he was saying I totally agreed with. What he does in the video, he spoke he spoke about the negativity towards new games and how people inherently these days constantly go for the negative within games straight away. He was talking a lot about Sniper Elite 4, which is a game I'm playing as well, and he was saying how much he'd really enjoyed this game. But there were people out there and a lot of reviews and things like that out there that were moaning that they've made the game too easy because it had this kind of X-ray thing where you could tag enemies and then you could see them walking around, even behind walls and things like this. Just to know that you can actually turn that off within the game. You don't have to have it on. Yeah, and that this game had been pulled apart, and he was just saying how much fun he'd had with this game, and that he'd actually gone back to Sniper Elite 3 as well, and he'd been playing that one. And he was just talking about how much negativity there was towards every game that comes out now. People are looking to rip it apart, and people aren't really willing to talk about the positive points as much as they are the negative points. And it got me thinking about why people are doing this, and at the risk of not wanting to kind of alienate a younger generation who are looking, because I'm going to go into that in a minute, why I do think it's slightly a generational thing, and I think it's half a generational thing and half a society thing of why people are ripping all these games apart. I don't want to alienate anyone, but I do think there's a reason why people are doing this. The first point I'd like to make is I've noticed it tends to be kind of what I'd like to call maybe the Xbox PS3 generation, and these are people have primarily grown up maybe at the tail end of playing PS2 generation, moving on to the PS3 generation or the 360 generation. So people sort of who are like mid-teens to mid to late 20s, I find to be that they're the generation who just like to rip every game apart, and I think it's more of a reflection on society now. And I'm not going to get into a big theological, excuse me, that's my phone, a big theological debate on society, but I do think there's a bit of a thing kind of people have been talking the last couple of years about the generation, the millennial generation being a very entitled generation, and I don't want to get into all that because I'm not going to start putting a certain generation down, but I think that plays into the whole gaming side of things heavily, because gaming is such a big piece of media now, and it's almost like, yeah, there's a sense of entitlement there, like, why haven't you given me something new? This is too much like that other game that I played last week, and it's constant need for something new and something different and something that hasn't been done before, and it's constant, and it's almost like people want something new on a daily basis. I don't care how good that game is. There was one like that last week that was very similar. That's not good enough, so I'm going to put it down. And it kind of, yeah, there's this sense of like entitlement, and it comes out so much within the gaming community more than it does, I think, any other community, where people just get a new game comes out, and the first thing people are doing is trying to rip it to pieces rather than seeing its good points. And the scary thing is that this is happening, I find, mostly in professional reviews online, some of which are so tailored towards kind of certain franchises. You know, a good example of this is Zelda that came out. Now, I haven't played Zelda Breath of the Wild. I would like to play it at some point, and it looks like it's a good game. But even without playing that game, I knew that game was going to get 10 out of 10 before it even came out. Because one, it was Zelda, and people will automatically mark up any game that's got Zelda written on the box. And two, all this hype had been made about it being the first open world Zelda. I think there's little elements of crafting in it and all that. Now, if that had been any other game except a Nintendo Zelda game, there's no way that game would have got 10 out of 10 by any reviewer, or 9 out of 10 even. It doesn't break any new ground by what I've watched some gameplay of it. I've seen people playing it. It looks a really good, exciting, fun game. But does it break ground? No. Everything in that game has been done before. There's nothing in that game that's been introduced that is new. Open world, Skyrim. Graphical style, The Witness, or you know, pick any other sort of cell shaded. It's not a cell shaded game, I know that, but you know, similar. You know what I mean. Zelda, you know, dungeons. Zelda's done it before. You know, crafting, been done in loads of games. You know, it looks a great game, and I do want to play it. I'm not totally saying. I'm not sitting here saying it's a shit game. I've not played it. I can't comment. But that game was overhyped and given 10 out of 10, and I knew that game would get top reviews before it even hit the shelves. And it makes you wonder how objective some of these reviewers are. Now, if you're going to be that unobjective with Zelda, why not do that with every other game? There's some really great games, and you know, Skeptic Gaming made some really good point. He made a really good comparison in the video about how Metal Gear Solid 5 got 10 out of 10s and great reviews, and another game that he really liked, Mad Max, had got very mediocre reviews. And he said, you know, the game wasn't perfect. It had its, you know, it had its issues, but in his opinion, it was a much better game than Metal Gear Solid. And you know what? I totally agree with him. I've played both of those games. They're both fine games, but Mad Max was a better game. It was more fun. It was just a more fun experience than Metal Gear Solid was. And Metal Gear Solid was a great stealth game, and you know, I had a lot of fun with it, but it wasn't amazing by any stretch of the imagination. It didn't break new ground particularly. It was really good and I enjoyed it, but it definitely had its issues. And one of the issues that it had was repetitiveness. You know, it was a very repetitive game, whereas, you know, Mad Max, yeah, that was repetitive as well, but there wasn't much between those two games really, and essentially they're not that dissimilar actually, apart from the stealth element. There's no stealth in the Mad Max thing, but you know, they're not that dissimilar. They're both open world games. You've both got to go to places on a map, do certain missions, take bad guys out. You know, they're not that dissimilar, and I just think there's a lot of negativity towards games when there shouldn't be, you know. And going back to what I was saying earlier, I think this stems from a generational thing, because when I was a kid, you know, I grew up Acorn Electron, Commodore 64, and the very first actual games console that I owned was the PS that I went out and bought myself, was the PlayStation 1. I did play on computers. Like I said, I had a Commodore 64. I played on an Amiga when I was a bit older. As you can see, I've still got an Amiga. when I moved out, my lived with a lad who had an Amiga. We played on that, so I've always gamed. But as far as consoles go, the first gaming console I bought was the PlayStation 1. But I've always loved gaming, you know, and I think that I can appreciate more. I think people of a slightly older generation, maybe, we can appreciate games a lot more because we know where they came from. And there's a difference between knowing where they came from and actually being there at the time. You know, a lot of these kind of game reviewers were maybe in the mid to late 20s. I'm not saying they can't appreciate where gaming has originated from, but, you know, they weren't there back in the day when, you know, when I was playing on my Commodore 64 and I had 5 games, and those 5 games lasted me a year, and that's the only, I had to just replay these games and really appreciate them. You know, unless you were there and you did that, you can't appreciate that. And I think that's helped me now to kind of appreciate how far gaming has come and to look for the positives within every game. That's why there's some really dodgy games out there that I love. I always talk about the Godfather Part 2 game. That game got absolutely fucking hammered when it came out. It got slated. It's still one of my favourite games. I love that game. I love all the different elements within that game. I love the way you can... It did, you know, people said it didn't follow the film. It did follow the film. It totally followed the Michael Corleone, Cuba uprising kind of part of the film. It ignored the flashback part of Godfather Part 2, but it followed the story of the film. It had so many different elements. It had the driving, it had the fighting, it had it was a very strategical game. You have to take over businesses, then you have to defend these businesses, and there was crews in it. A game that's come out very recently, which was very similar to the Godfather Part 2, was Mafia 3, and I've played that game and I've finished that game, and I still think the Godfather Part 2 is a better game than Mafia 3 was. So, you know, that's just an example of one game that came out that got slated. And, you know, there's lists of games that have come out that have been slated, and, you know, they're not all terrible games. All games have their issues. And for me, the only really bad game is a game that's full of bugs. If a game is essentially broken when it comes out, then I think it probably deserves to be slated. But other than that, you know, you can pretty much find good and bad elements in most games. And there's some really, you know, really, really good games that, you know, they're not perfect, but, you know, they're good, fun games. And I think people are forgetting what gaming is. It's supposed to be fun, and I think people are taking it far too seriously. And yeah, I think this sense of entitlement comes from people who've just been spoilt. They've got so much choice now, you know, that they kind of put their nose up at anything that isn't new. If it's not totally new and they've never done it before, they don't want to know. It's like they bring a game out, and then you bring a game out a week later and they're just like, oh, that game's rubbish because I played a game that was like that last week. Come on, give me something new. And it's constant, and it's this sense of, you know, it's got to be new, everything's got to be new. Nothing can be even slightly similar to what went before. Another example is Far Cry games, or Ubisoft sort of world of games. You know, when Assassin's Creed 2 came out, people raved over that game. It's still now one of the highest rated games ever, you know, popular. By the time you've got to Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, and I love the Assassin's Creed games. Again, they're not perfect, they've got their issues, but they're fun games. By the time you got to Syndicate, people were ripping these games apart. Oh, it's boring. How can you say Assassin's Creed is boring? Oh, it's boring. There's so much to do in that game. If you'd have shown me Assassin's Creed Syndicate, or even Brotherhood, or any of them when I was 12 or 10, I'd have been absolutely blown away. And yet, even like my own children come to me now, and like my son, he's 9, and you know, he came to me yesterday. He's got a stack of games like this. I'm bored. Can I have a new game? I'm bored. And it's just like, no, you can't fucking have a new game because you've got a big stack of them there, and they're all really, really good games. And he hasn't finished any of them. He's finished 1 or 2 of them. And it's just like, you know, I think maybe, yeah, if you've got kids, I think you should limit them to 10 games a year. That way they've got to play them. So yeah, I just want to come on and talk about it. I just think there should be a lot more positivity within gaming and within the community, and I think we should give more games a chance and realise where they come from and how far they've come, and appreciate them a little bit more than we do, because there's a lot of people out there who are just kind of hammering, you know, just nitpicking at every single thing within every single game and kind of slagging it off, and it's just, you know, it's kind of irritating. You know, stop being so entitled. You know, sit in a room, lock yourself in a room with a Commodore 64 or an Atari 2600 for a month and like 3 games, and then you'll appreciate how far games have come, and how lucky we are that we've got so much choice, and that not even the greatest games, not even the worst games, sorry, are that bad these days compared to some of the crap that, you know, we had to play when I was a kid, and we still thought it was great. So yeah. Anyway, that's a rant over. Thanks for watching, and I shall be back with another video soon. Take care. See you later. Bye.